When I started traveling so much, I learned something that I did not expect. And that was when I had to live out of a small backpack for so long, all those tiny inconveniences became impossible to ignore. So without really noticing, I started to build tiny habits that make my travel easier. None of these habits are life-changing on their own, but together they save me a lot of time, stress, and a surprising amount of mental energy. They just make my travels feel a lot more relaxed and calmer. And the funny thing is that lots of those habits that I developed while traveling now spilled over into my normal life and make it easier as well. So let me know in the comments which tiny habits that you use to make your travels or your life easier, and here are mine. So let's start with the first habit, and the problem that I had, that when you travel there is just so much information everywhere. There's hotels, flights, bus tickets, train tickets, pre-purchased tickets for sites, and usually all of them arrive by email. I often had the problem that all those booking confirmations disappeared in my email inbox because I often booked those things months ahead of time. And even though I collected all of them under the label travel, it was still hard to find because often I would not remember the exact name of the hotel that I booked and when I booked it and all those things. And I was so overwhelmed and annoyed so many times when I tried to find the correct information that I needed in the moment in my email inbox. So the habit that I developed at some point to save me was to use the snooze function of my email program. I think nowadays many email programs have this function, and it basically just means that I can snooze an email that I get until later. So if I would snooze it for 2 weeks, then it would automatically resurface in my mailbox in 2 weeks again. So I started to snooze all this information that I got regarding my travels for the day when I actually need it. So if it's like a hotel booking, it will automatically appear in my inbox again the day before the check-in is. If I need a train ticket, it will automatically pop up. So I usually snooze things for the day before, or if I need to print something, then I will snooze it for the day where I think that I will still have access to a printer. But I really love it that all this information automatically pops up in my inbox when I need it. So how did this spill over into my normal life? I think that information is the most useful if it pops up in the moment when you need it, and that is not only for travel but for everything in my life. So now I do it for everything in my life. I do it for doctor's visits, emails I need to follow up in a week or two, orders. So it's very, very useful for me. The next habit is something that is related to my devices, and that is keeping all of them charged. I travel with a lot of tech that needs charging. So not only my iPad and my iPhone, but I also have a microphone for filming. I have my earplugs for sleeping. I have a little flashlight. I have my Kindle, all those things. And I often use all those things on long travel days or on flights, and it was sometimes quite a lot of work to charge everything the day before I leave. The habit that I created to help me with this is that I created a charging schedule for my devices. Now, there are a few things that need to be charged daily, like my phone and my watch. But on some of my other devices, the battery life lasts me a lot longer. Like on my sleep buds, I think they last 6 days, my Kindle 4 weeks, and my flashlight I have to usually charge once a month. And on travel days, it's just important that there is some battery there, enough for the trip, that I would not run out in between, but it does not need to be fully charged. So for all those devices, I figured out how long the battery lasts, and then I just put a scheduled reminder into my phone. So as an example, my Kindle usually lasts me for 4 weeks. So every 20 days, I have an automatic reminder that now it's time to charge my Kindle. And these reminders just automatically repeat. So on the day when it pops up in my calendar that it's time to charge, I just plug it in and charge it. And this way, there's quite a lot of devices less that I have to worry to charge for travel days, because I can just trust that there is enough battery there. And now obviously I also use this in my daily life, because an automatic schedule is much better than me having to try to remember it. And this way I just have to worry a lot less about my devices. And I just keep the same schedule, so I never have to worry about my Kindle battery life anymore. So let's move on to the next habit. Another problem that I had while traveling is that I was often bombarded with a lot of information. For example, there's the map that the hotel gives you, or when I started for a hike, there is usually at the start of the trailhead, there's often a little board with the card, and there's a lot of information there that would be useful for me while I'm out there in the wilderness. And especially when hiking, the trail often looks very clear on a board or on a map, but as soon as you're out there and suddenly there's an unexpected split in the road, it's gonna get difficult. So the habit that I developed is that instead of relying on my memory, I just snap a quick picture. And this way I have to carry less clutter around with me, but I still can access all this information when I need it. And this is something that I find extremely helpful every day, because I basically turned the camera pictures roll into my external memory. I use it for all those information that I come across that could be useful later, not just for maps. I also use it to remember where I parked my car in a big garage, because often when I return a few weeks later, it's very hard to remember where I parked my car. I use it for bus timetables when I walk by them, because often information on the internet is not very reliable. I use it for restaurant opening hours, for Wi-Fi passwords, for campground layouts, so many uses. And if I find that I later need this information, I can just easily find it in my pictures. But since now I take so many pictures of things that I will only need for a certain period of time, there's another habit that I developed to help me beat the digital clutter. Because honestly, I hate digital clutter, and especially my pictures become very overwhelming. So I take lots of pictures from my travels, not just from this extra information, but at some point there's just a lot. And whenever I had to do something with those pictures, it just took forever. And I was annoyed, and then I just didn't do it. But one day I realized that this is just the perfect activity to do during all those long travel days. So all this dead time when I'm waiting at a gate, or when I'm in a long flight or in a long train ride, I think it's the perfect time to just sit down and declutter my pictures a little bit. So I usually just put on some music or a good podcast, and then I start deleting my pictures. And this is a habit that I try to keep up in my daily life as well, because a few minutes here and there will save me a lot of time down the road. And sometimes if I'm not in the mood and the amount of pictures is just too overwhelming, then I set myself the limit of deleting 20 pictures a day, and that also gets the job done at some point. And nowadays I just try to find quiet moments or some dead space in my normal life and just keep the habit going. The next habit that I developed is one that is surprisingly useful in my daily life. When I started to travel that much and live out of a backpack, I always had the problem that I could never find the things inside my backpack. I had the tendency to just put things wherever, and then when I needed them, I always had to dig through everything to find what I needed. So the habit that I developed is that every item that I bring with me has to have its own dedicated place where it needs to go, and that I have to put it back there after I used it. Now, my goal is not to be perfectly organized. My goal is just to make my life a little bit easier for my future self. And I also have to say that this is much easier now that I travel with fewer things and a smaller backpack. Now that I traveled for such a long time, I really got into a routine where my things need to go and they all have their dedicated place. But this is not something that I decided at home before packing. It's more something that just developed during travel, because at some point it just becomes clear where this thing that you need at the time should be, so you can easily access it. And that's one of the reasons why I usually don't group the things in my backpack by category or by what it is. I group it by when I need it. And it saved me so much time and energy that I can just stop looking for things and that I just always know where it is. And it also makes it much easier to see if I'm leaving something behind or if I'm missing something. Now, my takeaway from this for my life was that it's much easier to rely on consistency and rely less on memory. Because over time it just became second nature to take something out of my backpack, use it, and then put it back again. And this habit that every little thing has its own place and needs to go back there spilled over into my normal life as well. I enjoy it very much that I know where things belong. And I noticed that those items that are always annoying me, that are always in the way, that are always just cluttering up everything, are usually the things that did not get their own dedicated home yet. The next habit that I developed is to declutter my bag regularly. When we travel or in daily life, I just collect so much things along the way that then I forget that I had. I have all those tickets that I need to hold on for a while, like bus tickets or tickets for sites, so I just stuff them into my bag. Sometimes I throw some trash in my bag because there's no trash can around. And all those things can just start to creep into your bag. So the habit that I develop is that usually once a week I go through all my things, through my backpack, through my EDC bag, and just declutter all the things that are not necessary anymore. And I try to do the same in my daily life because, let's be honest, you can try to be as minimal as possible, but things just creep in. So I regularly try to declutter those things, but also remove the things that I don't enjoy from my life. The next habit that I developed saved me quite a lot of times, and actually it's a little bit embarrassing. But unfortunately, I'm notorious for leaving the same things behind. For me, it's usually my charger, because often I had to plug it in a hotel room behind the chair or something where it's not easy to see, because that was the only plug available. And I also regularly leave my soap bar hanging in the shower in the hotel room. And then I also always hate this feeling where I'm constantly thinking if I just forgot something or what it is that I'm forgetting. So the habit that I started is that I created a quick checklist of the things that I'm typical to leave behind. So before I leave any accommodation, I just quickly check my list. And that saved me an embarrassingly amount of time. Now also the habit that we talked before, that everything has its home, helps me a lot to see if things are missing, but just having this checklist adds an extra layer of protection so that I don't forget my things. And this checklist just reduces a lot of my stress because I don't have to remember everything. And it just reduces my anxiety a lot. And now I just use quite a lot of checklists also for other things in my life. For my monthly tasks, for the things that I do to prepare for a trip. I already did a video about that. What I need to do, the steps to publish these videos. So I'm a big fan of checklists and I find them very helpful. The next habit that I developed helped me to be a lot less stressed while traveling. I honestly hate it when I arrive somewhere and I immediately have to rush somewhere to go see things. And then I already get all nervous on the flight, like when the flight is delayed, but I know that I already have this ticket pre-booked for the afternoon and I don't have much slack, and I had to pre-book it months ahead because it's always sold out and I'm gonna miss it, and hate it. And the same thing always happened when I returned home from a trip. I always felt that as soon as I came home, the stress already started and all the appointments and everything. So the habit that I learned now is that I give myself permission to arrive slowly and settle in. And also the same when we arrive at a place, we don't schedule anything for that day. So we have enough time to unpack our things, settle in, maybe buy some groceries, explore the area a little bit, relax, read, just have a nice day. I always feel that I learn just as much about the place if I just have a quiet day and we sit somewhere and have a cafe and watch the locals or go grocery shopping, versus having to stress out to see every single tourist hotspot there is. So in my opinion, my trips get better if I slow down first. And I know that lots of others travel differently and really enjoy this fast pace, but we're all different and we all just have to figure out what we like for ourselves. And this thing is also something that spilled over into my normal life now. I honestly don't need to do and see anything anymore. I just prefer to do the things that are worth it to me. And honestly, the greatest luxury in my life for me is to have an empty calendar and then just go with the flow and see what the day brings. The next habit that I learned is that I like to do things a little bit, but more often. Because once things start to accumulate, they just can become a lot. And the main reason that taught me this is doing laundry on the road. As you know, I usually hand wash my things. In the past, I usually did one laundry day every 3 to 4 days, and then I ran into lots of problems. The sinks were too small, there was just too much clothes at once. It was so difficult to find places to hang them up to dry, especially in hotel rooms. There's often not a lot of space to hang things. So the habit that I developed is now I just do laundry with fewer items, but I do it more often. If I do it every day or every other day, it's just much quicker to do and much easier, and there's a lot less friction. And I think that the same principle goes for so many other things. So as another example, I record all our payments in a budgeting app. And when we're traveling a lot, obviously we pay lots of different things. And if I then only balance this thing once a week, it's like, it's a real task. But if I just take a moment more often to balance it, then it's no big deal at all. And this habit is extremely useful also in my normal life. So I try to figure out the things that could benefit from that habit. And then I just try to do those tiny things immediately or more often and not accumulate it until it's one big pile of tasks and will take me a long time to do it. So none of these habits are remarkable on their own. But together they made both my life and also my travels a little bit easier and feel more calm. So looking back over the years, I don't think that minimalist travel taught me to pack lighter. I think it taught me to notice unnecessary friction and then try to find simple ways to remove it. And I really love things that help me to think less. And every one of those habits just removed a little frustration, a little decision, a little annoyance from my life. And that is probably one of the most valuable things that I brought home from my trips. So if you enjoyed this video, then consider subscribing to my monthly newsletter or to this channel. That would make me very happy. And other than that, thank you very much for watching and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!